Okay, ready? So the meeting will now come to order. I haven't done this in a while, so Tito, you're the
I was just
board.
coming from the yes.
You know what I'm saying, you know the rules better than I
Yeah.
do, but the meeting will now come to order. Let me see, we're gonna start with the agenda items here. Call to order, roll call. So where's the list again? Right here. Okay. So Matias, that's me here. Alfredo.
Here.
Agradano, here.
Present.
Hector Tito Garcia.
Present.
Minerva Verial. Not present. Alejandro Verial. Not present. Alfonso Maldonado. Not present. Nathan Bratton.
Present.
And Jaime Montes.
Present.
All right, so that's 5 out of 8, so we have a quorum. Fantastic. Okay, we're gonna proceed to public comments, and I think at this point, they each have 3 minutes. If they go over a little more than 3 minutes, I suppose that'll be fine. Just not 10 minutes or 15, right? Huh?
Give it a try.
A few minutes, okay? Like I said, I'm gonna, Tito, did you know any of these? Did you know Mr. Papas
I
and
read both of them.
and Perry?
Yeah.
You read them both? Nathan, did
Well, I
you?
read one of them. I did saw this one, but I.
Did you know Mr. Papas?
No.
Okay. No?
No.
No? I'm the only one?
Oh, and Joseph.
Yes, yes. Okay, so, yeah, I knew both of them very well. You know, because I grew up playing tennis since I was 9 years old. And I took lessons from both of them. So, you know, both very worthy individuals. So, let's get started with public comments. Who wants to go first?
Well, they were here before us.
Ladies, do you want me to go first?
Go ahead.
It's based on the cards. We have to, could you put your name in here already?
Yes, sir.
Okay, you're not Joe, you're
Mario.
Mario Square, let's see. Okay,
Yes.
Mario Tejerina.
Yes, sir.
Okay, go ahead, Mario.
Okay. Well, I'm here to honor these two gentlemen. And I know both of them. And it's just, okay. And it's a privilege. And I'd like to say this. Why stop with two great individuals as people enter the park and have their children? And I said, look, these are two great ambassadors, but let's go further in. And oh, those courts had a number. They don't have numbers anymore. They have these individuals that provided an environment for the youth. They were hardworking people, skilled. There's doctors, yes. There's all types of careers. People that say, you know what, I'm gonna play tennis. But in doing so, the youth definitely pick up. Horizons expand. And they do the best to live the life of a good sportsman. Sportsmanship that will last a lifetime. Now, we want not just two, and they're deserving. We want more. And if you can, find it in your heart to give a place for these gentlemen. I know a lot of people are going to appreciate this, and they're going to love that park. And they are ambassadors to the game, but also they gave a lot to the sport. And in so doing, we were enriched. I'm one of them. My role models were 3. And these kids, they grew up, they learned tennis, and they got scholarships in the 70s. That was a tough thing to do. And they are part of us. I'm not going to mention, because then I have to mention a lot of other people, and I wish I could. I'm not, but they're still role models. And I say, look, he did it. You can too. And I thank you. I thank you.
Thank you, Mario. Very well said. You play tennis, Mario? Did you play tennis?
Yes, now I'm a fan, really, because these guys are too good.
Well,
I'm going to be 75. But you know what? They still play with me. I do have the techniques,
Right.
and
Okay.
but I love the game. But I
Good.
give back in also helping. Actually, what I do is try to teach somebody how to play and about the game, and I love
Very
that.
just enthusiastic about it.
Oh, yes.
Okay, great. Well, thank you very
passionate.
much.
Thank you, sir.
Who wants to go next? You wanna just stick to
Should
one
we-
side first and?
Yeah, let's alternate.
You wanna alternate?
No, that's okay.
That's okay, you wanna go next?
Sure.
You're,
John.
John and Joe. Okay, you're Joe, he's John. How do you pronounce your last name?
Huntsmasher.
That's not sure, okay.
All right, I'm gonna read a little bit here.
Okay, go ahead.
Honorable members of the commission, ladies and gentlemen, my name is John Huntsmasher. I am here in person on behalf of the Widener family. His 4 children live out of town. Mike lives in Maryland, Kathy Day lives in Georgia, Barbara Delange lives in Arizona, and David lives in Kerrville. This is a unique opportunity to be here, and it is an honor and a privilege of mine in favor of renaming the Market Tennis Courts to Thomas Perry Widener Tennis Courts. Mr. Widener helped design and supervise the construction of the original 5 asphalt courts at the 1300 block of Market. And he also maintained and was instrumental in the expansion of the additional 4 tennis courts in 1976 at the Market Tennis Courts. Mr. Widener was the director and tennis pro at Market Tennis Courts, and he volunteered countless hours of teaching and coaching many kids and adults from the 1970s to the 1980s, and impacted hundreds of athletes as they grew up to be outstanding leaders of this community. For the underprivileged kids, Mr. Widener provided tennis rackets. He gave away tennis shoes, tennis clothing. Mr. Widener had a tennis pro shop at Market Tennis Courts and on Farragut Street next to the old H-E-B grocery store. Mr. Widener impacted hundreds of student athletes with his generosity and knowledge as he developed, expanded, and promoted the sport of tennis in Laredo. He generated funds for many scholarships for Laredo junior players. Many of his students continued to play and compete after high school at the college level. Mr. Widener served as Laredo Tennis Association in different capacities and even as a president, and was instrumental in adding the sport of tennis to be part of the Border Olympics in 1976. Because of Mr. Widener was so widely known in Texas and Mexico, he invited many tennis players to participate and compete in 2 large local tennis tournaments sponsored the Laredo Tennis Association, the Laredo Spring Open and the Laredo Fall Open. Average entries to each tournament would run between 500 to 700 tennis players. This is unheard of today. It does not exist. Because of these 2 large tournaments, each year there was a huge boost in Laredo's economy. Back then, I remember, because I lived through it, there used to be host families that would host players from Mexico and from Texas here. Mr. Widener also gave advice on life. He would always give advice for everybody in life, all the kids who were growing up. For me, he told me, follow my dreams. And I did. I became a firefighter for the city of Laredo for 30 years, and I retired back in 2014. I continue to be very involved in different capacities as a tennis coach, a tournament director for the city of Laredo, a board member, past board member for Laredo Tennis Association, and United States Tennis Association tennis official. Yearly, the Laredo Tennis Association has a tournament for its volunteers, and is named after Perry Widener Volunteer Invitational Tennis Tournament. Thomas Perry Widener is just not a man's name. To my mind, he has been more than that. It is a state of mind. It evokes an awe and an admiration. He has become a legend. Thomas Perry Widener did things that will live in our hearts and minds forever. He changed the lives. He was the father of tennis of Laredo. So, for his unselfish dedication, celebrating the historic landmark tennis courts in a historic neighborhood to the Thomas Perry Widener Tennis Courts, I just want to go over a little bit what he was a member of. He was a life member of the International Tennis Hall of Fame. He was a master professional of the United States Professional Tennis Association. He was the United States Tennis Association Texas chairman, Texas Division Scholarship Fund, and was an executive on the Council for Boys Youth Development Committee, which administers the Junior Davis Cup program. He was a life member of the Texas Tennis Coaches Association. He was the United States Racket Stringers Association Master Stringer, Professional Stringers Association Master Stringer. In 2006, the Laredo Tennis Association recognized Perry Widener for 35 years for being #1 tennis ambassador. Mr. Widener had an air and heating company, and in the 1980s was an AC and heating instructor at Laredo Junior College at that time. Sadly, Mr. Widener passed away December 29, 2016 at the age of 91 in Kerrville, Texas.
Wow.
He is survived by his 2 sons and daughters and extended family. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Very well written.
Thank you.
Let's see, Joe, you wanna go next, or do you have anything to say?
Well, I didn't know Perry back in the 70s or 80s. I caught him at the end of his career. I started playing tennis in the United High School Open tournaments.
Right.
And, you know, I was just a beginner tennis player, but I noticed this old guy, you know, stringing rackets. And, you know, the kids would come up to him, give him the racket, and he'd string them. And, there wasn't much interaction, much talking. He'd just hand the racket, he'd string them, and it back, and, you know, not charging them anything, and, you know, just humbly doing that. And I was really impressed with that. It was like, you know, he's really sacrificing for the good of the game. And you know, that's how I knew him, just that little window.
When did you start playing?
It'd be about 17 years ago.
17 years ago.
Yeah,
So you're still around stringing at 17 years ago.
yeah, at the United.
So he was in his 70s, early
Yeah,
70s, right?
yeah. But anyway, it was just humbly somebody doing their job.
Yeah.
I remember it, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, great. And for the record, your name is Joe
McCary.
McCary. Thank you. All right, do we have anybody else we want to put on the phone or anything like that?
Yeah, let me call his.
We have the phone right here. If you, the speaker, if you would like to,
Okay.
you can call it.
Let me call her real quick and let her know that I'll be calling her from a different line,
Okay.
okay? Because you know how these days with the spam and everything, you can't.
Yeah. Right. Okay, so while we wait for that, let me just get these organized over here. Okay. On the other side, we're gonna have Josie, Victor, and Iris, right?
Yes.
Hello, Barbara. I'm gonna be calling you in a couple of seconds on a different phone number, so you know, in case you don't recognize it, and we'll put you on speaker on that one. Okay? Okay. No. It'll be just pure audio. Yeah. Okay. All right. Give me a couple of seconds. Thank you. Bye-bye. Bye.
This isn't live, right? Or is it?
Live? Yes.
It's live?
Yes.
Okay, well, you could tell her, watch it live. I think there's probably a delay.
You just wanna go ahead and dial the 9 before you dial the number?
The 9. Okay. It's an out-of-town number, an out-of-town zip code. Is that okay?
If you wanna do
area
9,
code.
9-1 and then the area code.
Okay. Okay. Excuse me. I'm sorry. Apologize. Okay, so it's
This is his daughter.
How do you turn it on?
Mr. Wagner.
Yes, Mr. Wagner's daughter.
Oh, just
Dial the number.
Okay.
1 and then.
I'm remembering
8.
Perry as you're speaking.
No, it's a different.
Yes.
It's called Perry.
8.
You knew him well.
Well, I was,
Which is to
I
call.
guess, well, he played at the market, it's in the market, but I took lessons from the Nopal.
Oh, cancel.
No, Clubhouse.
It's just
No, I
Yeah,
got
6 tennis courts.
Oh, okay.
You ready?
He knows.
Hello?
Hello, Barbara?
Yes?
Okay, you're on speaker, so you can speak
She's not
now.
on here, but.
Okay,
Okay.
all righty. Good evening, everyone. My name is Barbara Wagner Jalantel, and I am the youngest daughter of Perry Wagner. And thank you for this opportunity to speak on behalf of my brothers Michael and David Wagner and my sister Kathy Wagner Day regarding the proposal to honor my father, Perry Wagner, for his contribution and leadership to both Laredo tennis and the Laredo community. First of all, I want to thank John Huntsnurcher for beginning the lengthy process for this proposal and for the many hours he has invested in reaching out to so many who admired and respected my father. To be clear, the Wagner family did not initiate this way of remembering my father's contribution to Laredo tennis, and we appreciate John keeping us informed at every step of the process. My family was overwhelmed by the many letters of support as we learned of our father's positive influence on the lives of so many Laredo tennis players. What my siblings and I observed as family members has been noted in the letters of recommendation we were invited to submit. I would like to quickly mention a few of my clearest memories of watching my dad build the first practice wall at the court, repairing the nets, and cleaning the courts after storm, organizing, promoting mini tournaments, especially making up the draws, which was a very complicated process, also especially stringing rackets. He often strung rackets for free. I myself strung a few of those rackets for some of the kids at the course that needed them. And he also taught many players to string their own tennis rackets. We were also aware of all the hours he spent attending meetings and submitting data for the funding of the Market Street courts and designing and supervising the construction of the courts. Perry always spoke with pride of his accomplishments at the Market Street courts, which included being director of the courts for several years. The names of those who submitted letters were familiar to us as a family because of how often Perry spoke with admiration of those he coached and played tennis with in Laredo. I respectfully thank the Honorable Commission for the consideration of this proposal. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Barbara. Barbara,
Yes.
are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Yeah, I'm Matias de Llano, I'm the chair. And I remember your dad fondly. I took lessons from him actually at El Nopal. I think I think Paul Young convinced him to go there for a while, right?
Yes, I'm having a little trouble hearing you.
Can you hear me? You can't hear me?
Yeah, I think I heard most of them.
Yeah, but yeah, I remember it very well. I just wanted to say, I think I'm the only tennis player in this room. But yeah, thank you very much. And you can watch a live stream of this meeting on YouTube. I don't know how. Maybe if you search City of Laredo, naming and recognition.
It's being live streamed right now?
Yes.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that. All right.
I don't know how to access it though. You're gonna have to Google it.
Okay.
I don't
Well,
know how to
thank you.
access
I appreciate your comments, and thank you so much. And I will try and get on right now and watch the rest of the meeting.
Okay, thank you, Barbara.
Okay.
Thank you
You're
for your
welcome.
time.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Okay, I remember very, very well. Let's start now. Any questions on our side? Nathan, Tito, Jaime, Alfredo, no questions on our side? Okay, you want to get started? Either Mrs. Papas or Mrs. Guerrero or Mr. Vasquez? Who wants
I'll
to
go first.
Okay,
Victor Ma.
Mr. Victor, just announce your name and then you get started.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening, committee members of the City of Laredo Facility Naming and Recognition Commission. I'm Victor Vasquez III, the chair of the City Parks and Recreation Committee. However, today I come here before you to advocate support for to name the Market Street tennis courts after Mr. George Santiago Papas. Mr. George Santiago Papas was born and a native, lifelong Laredoan, having grown up in the neighborhood of El Cuatro, which is actually a few blocks from here. Having graduated as a champion tennis player from Laredo, now Martin High School, as an extraordinary student athlete in 1935. Mr. George Papas was married to Nieves Mogas Papas, from which they had 4 daughters. Ms. Sarah Papas, who has now passed on, Celita Papas Borchers, Judith Papas Sabrini, and Ms. Josie Papas, who all live in Laredo, Texas. Mr. Papas was often showcased locally for his extraordinary success as a tennis champion. Laredo Morning Times attests his achievements by even calling him a tennis hero. Having won many championships as a young adult at school, city, district, and regional levels, Mr. Papa achieved great success as a student, having been the only Laredoan to win city, county, district, and regional titles before reaching the state levels at the time. Mr. Papas was involved in the Market Street tennis courts since they were merely a concept and avidly promoted their importance to making tennis accessible to all, beginning with his children, grandchildren, and area students. regularly offering free coaching skills and gifting free tennis rackets and tennis balls to low-income students. Mr. Papas was no stranger to our community. Even up until 1949, Laredo Morning Times proclaimed that George Papas remains king of Laredo tennis player. The motivated success allowed him to inspire others and advocate for adding tennis courts around the city, in which you now see today, hiring instructors at Laredo Junior College, which is now Laredo College, and all Laredo area high schools. Mr. Papas contributed to our community in many ways that we still see today, by bringing support to a sport that was not as known at the time in our city. Mr. Papas was able to teach tennis to many that are possibly even still playing today, and yes, everybody know many. Now, of course, they're out there playing, so please consider to name the Market tennis courts after Mr. Laredo's own tennis champion, Mr. George Santiago Papas.
Thank you, Victor. Very well said. Okay, who wants to go next? Mrs. Guerrero or Joe? Okay, go
Good
ahead.
evening, committee, and everyone present. I'm Josie Papas, one of 4 daughters of George and Nieves Papas of Laredo. And I speak on behalf of the Papas family, including my sisters, Celita Papas Borchers and Senator Judith Sapellini. Our parents loved Laredo, where they were born, lived all their lives, and died. They instilled that love in us, which is why the 3 of us still live here. We prepared a packet for you that begins with an overview of Mr. Tennis of Laredo. It chronicles my father's years as a Martin High School tennis champion who broke records at all levels of competition, as a young adult who won tennis tournaments locally throughout Texas and in Mexico, as an organizer who served as a founder and president of the Laredo Tennis Association, of the Trojans Tennis Club and of the Booster Club, and most important, as a coach who especially devoted himself for decades to offering free coaching and free tennis rackets and balls to lower income students. Our packet includes wonderful newspaper articles with headlines such as George Papas remains king of Laredo tennis players, and references to him as a tennis hero and ace player with a startling and brilliant record, including the only Laredoan to win city, county, district, and regional championships. Years later, when Rodrigo de Llano won a state tennis championship, the Laredo Times quoted him as saying, "Whatever success I may have achieved, I attribute to the splendid coaching of George Papas. He deserves a great deal of credit for teaching me a good deal of tennis." It was difficult to choose which of so many articles to include in your packet, but we couldn't resist including, on page 3, a 1973 photo of my daughter, Chanel. She was only 2, but my father had dressed her in tennis whites, bought her a little racket, and took her out to the Market Street courts. 12 years later, he took his only grandson, 3-year-old Carlos Sapellini Jr., to play there, carrying, of course, his little racket and wearing tennis whites. My father devoted himself to making tennis more available, accessible, and affordable to our hometown. He and his brother, for example, poured the slab for the first tennis court at Laredo Junior College and built it with their friends. Even as he championed building tennis courts at all the schools and at the old Casablanca Country Club, he coached on what a 1943 newspaper article describes as an empty yard on Hidalgo Street, which others may not have dignified by calling it a court. He was at the forefront of building the Market Street courts, and he played and coached there, mostly without charging, from its beginning until his illness and death in 1989. Many Laredoans over the years have talked about naming these courts to memorialize his contributions. I hope you agree. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Very well written and said. Okay, Edith, you wanna?
Iris Guerrero, yes.
Iris, sorry.
Yes.
Okay.
My connection to Mr. Papas is a little bit different. Obviously, I'm not an athlete, but I did teach girls at the Girl Scout house, which is right next to the courts. So that's how I kind of learned about the project and was interested, and so I will be speaking on behalf of the Papas family as well.
Okay.
George Papas inspired players of all ages and made the world of tennis available to students who otherwise couldn't have played. I hope you will read the many touching letters in your packets. Raul Rodriguez, for example, writes about growing up poor near the Market Street courts, and he said, Mr. Papas wrote, "He would always help me and every player that would go to the tennis courts. He would be there from early in the morning till late at night. Hot or cold weather, he would be there. I never got charged a penny for his coaching or advice. I was very poor growing up and had no way of paying him, but his help was very, very valuable. Dora Martinez writes, in the 1980s when Mr. Papas was elderly, he still went to the market tennis courts daily, generously offering his advice and giving tennis rackets and balls to any of us who couldn't afford them. That's how my friends and I from the Colonia Guadalupe knew him. George Haynes writes about how Mr. Papas was a pro bono instructor for him and other Laredo Junior College students, and describes him as a one-man self-appointed ambassador of tennis. George Papas is one of those unsung heroes that gave up himself without asking anything in return to so many over so many years. Naming the courts in his honor will be a legacy to his giving without receiving all those years. Javier Santos writes, the naming of the George Papas tennis courts would be a most fitting tribute to the Laredoan who did more for tennis for generations than anyone else. From his shining days as a star athlete at Martin High School to his years as a fierce tennis player and inspirational coach who led others to excel, his legacy is unmatched. I hope you will honor his unmatched legacy with the naming of the George Papas Market Street courts. Thank you.
Thank you, Iris. Very well said, again. Okay, so let me get back to the agenda. Anybody else? You don't want to put anybody on the phone or? No? No phone calls? Just checking, trying to be fair. Okay, next item is going to be discussion with possible action to consider the request to rename the Market Street Tennis Courts at George Santiago Papas Tennis Courts or the T. Perry Widener Market Tennis Courts. Okay, so I think what we came up with when we first started this, I don't know, maybe a few years ago, right? Before the COVID anyway. We came up with our policy, which we're following or adhering to, and then we came up with a criteria. And usually what we do when we get a request is we go through, it's just 10 bullet points, and I'm sure Mr. Papas and Mr. Widener are fine when we go through these points, but we have to go through them just for the purposes of following protocol, right? Okay, so we switch to the last page here. I think you have the back page. It says City of Laredo naming of city facilities criteria, 10 bullet points. Okay, the first one is may name the building for deceased or living people. Okay, well, obviously either deceased or living, right? In this case, they're both deceased. Use the names of admirable and honorable people. I guess we can definitely skip over that one because they're both highly qualified in terms of that category. Recognize substantial contributions, whether by time or financial. Again, both of them qualify. Avoid changing the name of a facility with exceptions as noted, the City of Laredo naming of city facilities policy. I have a question about that. Right now, what are they called? Just the market courts?
Market Street courts.
Market tennis courts.
And there's a sign out there that says
Yes.
market tennis courts?
Yes, that's
Or there's no name on them, okay.
Yes.
Avoid using corporate names. We're not gonna use corporate names. Avoid naming facilities for department city employees or elected officials. Okay, that doesn't apply. Require the completion of the commission's proposal form for naming a City of Laredo facility. I think they provide enough information to circumvent that, right? Consider the correlation between the facility and the recommended name. Okay, that definitely applies, both tennis and their tennis courts. Both tennis players with tennis courts, right? Consider public opinion comments presented to the commission regarding proposed names. Again, both sides spoke, and I think it was 3-3 with one person on the phone. And avoid individuals that have been convicted of a felony. Okay, that one is definitely thrown out. So they're all okay. Everybody's okay, right?
Right.
That was just, we have to do that. So now what we have to do as a board is discuss this. And my first question, actually my first statement is this. Since I'm the chairperson and I play tennis, and I grew up playing tennis since I was 9 or 10 years old, I had the privilege of taking lessons with Perry and with Mr. Papas. And I remember, I have a very good memory, and I remember the last day I took Mr. Papas at Mona Achar's house in the very back with Mr. Papas drilling Richie Achar and I with tennis balls over and over again until our arms fall off. And And then Richie and I both asked, you know, can we take a water break? And he said, not yet. And Richie ran to the house anyway. And I said, I'm not gonna miss one stroke with this man, you know? I gotta keep going, cause you know, cause you're so good, right? You're so good with us. Richie came back and of course, we continued on for about another hour. And that was the last lesson I took with him. I took several. And Mr. Perry I took, he would watch us out there in the tennis courts at Market, but what I took with him was at Nopal. Because I think Paul Young hired him back when I think he put up 6 tennis courts. It was a clubhouse.
9 tennis courts.
9 tennis courts?
Yes.
And then he had the little clubhouse in the middle.
Right, that sunken tennis court in the bottom of the
Yeah, right, and the sunken tennis court in the middle,
Yes,
right in front.
yes.
And of course, we'd always take Perry our rackets, so he could tell us if they were good rackets or not, and I had an old wooden Dunlop racket. And he said that one's pretty good, and in today's standards, I think, yeah, somebody's arm would definitely fall off of that racket. And, but he taught us very many lessons, just what Mr. Papas did. So I took lessons from both parties, which is pretty amazing. Which tells me one thing, and one thing only, that they were highly enthusiastic people. They were very much admired by the kids of my generation, and I think they're both worthy of the naming, which is gonna be difficult to decide. So I would like to ask the committee if they have any other thoughts or recommendations as to how we should proceed.
I just want to say, Chairman, that I never played tennis. My game of choice was kick the can back in the neighborhood. I couldn't afford to buy a record or whatever. But looking over this information on these 2 gentlemen, I didn't know them. I mean, they're the 2 individuals are well deserving of naming this tennis court. So it's going to be a very difficult decision for me. I would like to go over and read more on them because it's very interesting, the lives of these 2 men, the contribution they make to Laredo as far as the tennis is concerned. I mean, I didn't know there was tennis when I was young, you know. So as for me, it's going to be hard to make a decision until I go and read both of these individuals' biography, and after that, it's still gonna be hard.
Well, you think it's gonna be hard? He taught my uncle how to play tennis, and he became a state champion. And then I was very enthusiastically taught by Mr. Perry, and I went on to John Newcomb Tennis Camp, and so he taught me how to, but I got lessons with both of them. You think you're gonna have a tough job? I'm gonna have a tough job because they were both heroes of mine when I was a kid. So I wish we could split up the tennis courts into 2, but we can't. And one of the ideas is to name each court. I think that would probably be kind of difficult, but I guess the city council put this on the agenda. So we have to follow what they're asking for. It's either or. And I don't know as we can give them a recommendation, maybe Nathan, you would know, as to maybe how we can, compromise the situation here.
I was thinking something similar.
Mm-hmm.
I played very little tennis when I was in high school. After a while, you get tired of hitting it into the net or over your opponent's head. Neither of those
over the wall,
competitive.
over the fence.
You do that 4 or 5 times, and they kind of tell you you're not really competitive. But I think it's problematic when you have 2 distinguished individuals who are both
right.
Obviously worthy of having their names of being honored. I think it is an error to present this in a kind of a conflicting manner.
Yeah, like a competition.
And so I was thinking the same thing. Mr. Papas is obviously a senior to Mr. Widener. And so if you were to name the courts for both of those gentlemen, with Mr. Papas first to sort of signal him being older and
The
you know, having
seniority.
started seniority. But I do not see why we cannot make a recommendation to the council that is different from whatever they wrote. We
Because
are a
we can't with the
recommending body,
committee.
and, you know, the council can also take that recommendation up. I mean, we've heard, you know, about both of these gentlemen. Why does it have to be one or the other?
Well, I think it is kind of, we're in a difficult spot here, especially me, I think.
I think say what he said. If I had to vote for right now, I personally would go with Papa because it's more of a senior than somebody else. If you have to, if you can recommend both, that'd be great.
What
But
about
man,
this?
my opinion is, you know
Yeah.
what, they're close. The only difference is he was around a lot longer than and that's like a one photo finish on the track.
Yeah.
The photo finish. If I had to vote for one,
You can absolutely draw those distinctions. He's older. He's from Laredo. He's from Laredo. I don't know about Mr. Widener. I don't know where he's from originally.
Cotula, he was from Cotula,
From Cotula.
but he moved
These
in
are Laredo
1963.
still Laredo.
What, I'm gonna throw something out there, okay? This is just kind of a, right, we're a little brainstorming session here because we're in the spot. Would any of the families or the people representing Mr. Widener or Mr. Papas object to possibly throwing this recommendation back at him? The Papas Perry tennis courts, market tennis courts.
Or, yeah, center, complex, whatever.
You know, maybe, I wish we could do, you said that, that there's more than just tennis courts out there, right?
Yes,
It's
there's
like the kiddie park.
Yeah, there's a kiddie
Oh, the
park,
kiddie
and
park,
then there's a splash bar.
I think an insult.
Those
I
are
was
not-
just
No, no, what I'm saying is naming, the, you know, I'm just throwing it out there.
Yeah, no,
Right.
I understand.
You know, Papas, you know, Market Center and the Perry Tennis Courts, or vice versa, you know? Perry's Market Center, Papas Tennis Courts, I don't know, I'm just throwing it out there, just trying to, you know, get a recommendation.
I want to echo Mr. Garcia and Mr. Nathan. Mr. Papa has a seniority. Both gentlemen did as much as they could during their time for the community. Our prerogative as a committee member here is to decide one or the other. That's what the agenda is
Or
reading.
possible, we don't have to do it now,
Okay.
cause it says with the possibility of,
Was a
coming up with a
possible
decision
action
now.
to consider
right,
either or, but I wanna echo, and I wanna also as well, can we do a motion, you know, naming Mr. Papa as,
yeah, I'm the chairman, so you can do it, you can make any motion.
okay? Because if now we're gonna be tossing back and forth, Mr. Perry, Mr. Papas, and
Let's
it's
do it
difficult,
Tennessee,
yeah.
That's exactly how I feel right now, yeah.
It's gonna be
Just
difficult.
Before you make your motion, just one observation. This page that I have here, I don't have a similar one for Mr. Papas. It says Perry Widener Market Tennis Center is the proposed
Tennis court.
designee name.
Okay, where is that?
It's on one of these pages. That's apparently what they're,
That's
you
the
know,
first one.
that's for one, and I would assume there's a similar one
Do
somewhere out there
you
that
get
I
one
didn't
for
get.
Mr. Papas?
That probably says the George Santiago
It's on the
Papas
second, that was
Market
proposed
Tennis
by-
Centers.
By Councilman Martinez.
Okay, and I don't know what they were proposing for the other, because I don't have that. But again,
Yeah, I get that. I get that one. I got that one.
George Santiago Papa, what does it say what the proposed name is? It doesn't say the same. So along the lines of what you were saying earlier, I mean, maybe the George's Papas hyphen Perry Widener Tennis Center. Get rid of market, everybody knows where it's at, and then you would have both of them honored.
Yeah, I mean,
Appropriate.
yeah, like you said, we're at,
It's tough. I mean, they contributed to the community
Well, then
and that's why they said it
Sure.
to us to determine.
Well,
which is-
but again, you know, this is a committee that doesn't make the decision.
Mhm.
We make a recommendation,
Yeah.
Right,
okay?
right.
And I would not be surprised if in the past, you know, you probably sent names up there and
They change it.
they change them themselves.
Yeah, they can, it's their
And
prerogative.
that's their prerogative, because they are the body that names.
Right,
you
this
know,
is just a recommendation.
So my thinking is, we can recommend whatever we feel comfortable
And they're
with.
gonna decide as a
Yeah.
council.
And I personally lean toward the two of them being on it.
Yeah, I was just throwing that out there. I'm just-
No, I agree
It's a
with
good
you.
idea, but you're putting them in a situation, that's why they send it to committee. Now, you're gonna send it to back up, we're getting both named, now you put all 8 of them. And
Maybe that's what they wanted us to do.
Well, maybe,
I don't
but
know.
we haven't never done that, we've always sent one person.
Well, we've never been in this situation before.
I don't remember the last meeting we even had.
The last one we had was just one single name.
This is the, this
There
is
was
the,
no 2 or 3 people.
this is the first time they've ever done this, the first time. We've had, you know, several meetings, but we've never had 2 people, they've never thrown this at us like this. And they put us in a, you know, in a difficult situation here because they're both very worthy
No,
individuals.
I think so too, but I think, I mean, again, I just think one did a little further ahead than the other. Because from Laredo, family Laredo, everything's been Laredo,
Yeah,
nowhere
right.
else.
Mhm.
And in my opinion, that's what I would want to see.
Okay. And then we have Alfredo here that wants to go over you wanna go over the pamphlets again, right?
Well, I think that, with me not being so aware of, the biography of these 2 gentlemen, I cannot make a good decision as far as naming them, pero seeing what Tito has to say, and then what Nathan has to say, I mean, we can either or go with the George S. Pappas Market Tennis Court or the George S. Pappas Perry Widener Market Tennis Court.
I think that would be a hard thing to put on a plaque, right? I guess, you know, the Papas Perry or whatever, Market Tennis Court.
Could do that.
You can do just the last names. You know, there's a lot of facilities that are just named after the last names of the individual,
Yeah.
right?
Yes, that'd be great.
I mean, but those are just recommendations. I mean, remember, I'm the chairperson, so if somebody wants to make a motion, they can.
I'll make a motion.
Go ahead.
Pappas Widener Market Tennis Courts.
Okay.
And if they can fit it in, George.
Okay,
You know,
okay, well, I have to
I'll make that
ask,
my motion.
Okay, any second?
Are you gonna put market or are you just gonna discard market?
you could put market, my motion was Pappas Widener Market Tennis Courts.
Yeah, well, since I was a kid, I've always known.
It's always been the market
Yeah,
courts.
because of the street, right? That's why they named it market. They kept it simple.
Yeah, because market didn't have anything to do with
Yeah,
tennis.
yeah. Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second? Phil? Emily? Vito, no second?
Dies for lack of second.
Okay, so it dies.
I make a motion that we name it after Mr. Papas.
Okay, we have a motion, to name it after Mr. Papas.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, we have a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Your majority.
1, 2, 3, we got the majority. Okay, so be it. It shall be called the, well, remember, this is just a recommendation. So we are recommending, based on the motion, based on the votes, that we send this back to the council with a recommendation of naming it the George Papas Market Tennis Courts, correct?
George S. Pappas?
S. Papas, George S. Papas Market Tennis Courts.
Just tennis, or market there. But it doesn't matter.
Market Courts, Tennis Courts.
But I think in the same breath, when you all give that back to the council, also said the memo was to name both too. Because they'll have that, if they really, they'll do it themselves.
Yeah. Now, for both sides, this is a very difficult spot that they put us in. But for both sides, just for the record, like I said, I'm the only one that took lessons from both. And, you know, sometimes, you know, this is the first time we ever come into this situation. But I remember Mr. Perry fondly, I have very good memories of him, and Mr. Papas. So they're both very worthy individuals, and I think they both deserve their name on the, you know, on the tennis courts. But, you know, the committee ruled, so this is what we're gonna recommend to them. Doesn't mean that they're gonna say yes. This is what we recommended, okay?
But this is not set in stone, because it's gonna be up to the city council.
Yeah.
They're the ones that are gonna make the final decision.
And they could throw it back at us,
Yeah,
or they could say, you know, yes, or they could change it.
yeah,
We're just a recommending body,
yeah.
right? We don't have the final say. But, anyway, so any other questions, any other issues?
Can I say something, sir?
I believe you can.
Okay. Now, I know you made a decision. Yeah, and that's why we have you here, and I appreciate it. Now, if you said you said this is what's voted, you're not gonna show a possible, maybe saying, but this could also go, we decided on this, could you just leave something there for the court?
I don't think we can because we've
Okay.
already voted.
All right, now, can you recommend a center court for him?
And that's
You can't do that?
somewhere I was going with it.
Yeah. Alright.
Let them know that it was very tight. I mean, literally photo finish. Because I know that the market courts have a championship court where they play the final. I'm part of Board Olympics, so I pretty much.
Yeah,
know
the
that.
center court, right? The
Right.
center court.
Yeah,
Yes,
we
sir.
have them at all our schools too.
Yes, sir.
That maybe consider when they name the whole court that they name, maybe take consideration that the final court under his name, because we've done that in our.
That's a
schools.
very good.
We name our schools, whatever the courts are, but we've pushed to, because whatever the actual championship court is named for a certain person.
Yeah.
And it's not every court, it's just the
Yeah,
championship
we
court.
can name it the T. Perry Widener Championship Tennis Court.
Right.
Yes.
Not
And that
courts.
adds to the market because of the history
Yeah.
of him, but the court itself, the whole thing complex being named
Yeah,
after.
the championship tennis
But I think
court.
he should have something in
He
there.
should.
too.
Thank you, sir.
Court number
I
seven
agree.
court number seven is usually.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the championship.
Nathan, you were gonna say something?
That's a great idea. I would recommend that you, open up
Yeah,
we make a motion, whoever was on the prevailing side needs to make a motion to reopen
Just
item number 4.
To amend it.
yeah.
We need to open it
I make
up.
a motion to open it up again, you have to second it.
I'll second.
Okay.
All in
Okay,
favor?
and then,
Oh, we have-
all in favor?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay,
And
now.
the motion is to name the facility, Mr. Papas, but name the championship court under.
Okay, that's the next, Tito, that's the best idea for all of it.
So,
Okay.
Can we apply?
just, well, wait a minute.
Okay, wait a minute.
Just let's get it straight. What exactly do you want it named? Because they've given us various,
Well,
it would be the George S. Papas Market Tennis Center? Is that the way I have it, or?
The court.
I think the tennis court, not the
Court,
center.
yeah.
But
Tennis
then,
courts. Okay.
that'd be more, it's gonna go to your committee to actually
So
do
that's
that.
the
No, wait a minute,
George
wait a minute.
S. Papas Market Tennis Courts.
Court,
Yes.
Courts.
With courts, COURTS.
Plural.
Because
Plural.
here they have centers, is what I'm
Yes.
trying to tell you.
And then Tito, do you want it?
And then the
Okay,
second
that's
part of that motion is to name the championship court
Court, the center
After-
court, Court 7 specifically,
after Mr. Widener,
the T. Perry Widener
championship court.
Championship Court.
Court, right.
See,
They can actually put it there right on the.
which is, and then put Court 7, just so the council knows.
I'll second that motion. What do you think second?
Court 7, you said?
Court 7,
my motion.
okay?
I'll second.
So a second, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Motion passes. All right, excellent. I think we're good then, good to go, right? So meeting adjourned.
Motion to adjourn.
You have to.
Okay, who made a motion?
Mr. Nathan.
Motion to
And
adjourn.
second? All right.
And
All those in favor? Everyone say aye? Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, motion passes. All right.